Assalamu alaikum and good morning to everyone. Thank you for logging in to day two of the Singapore FinTech Festival that is taking place. Well, I'm presenting the chapter from Pakistan. This is brought to you in association with the Pakistan FinTech Association. Coming to you live from Karachi. My name is Faris Khalid. Very happy to be here. Just want to do a quick recap. We had a great day yesterday. The theme was financial inclusion, and we had some wonderful speakers, great insightful discussions, a panel discussion, a fireside chat, and we ended the day with a masterclass, which was on the theme of designing for a more financially inclusive product. We had a great response, and we hope you guys are all psyched for day two. The theme for today is investments in the fintech sector. So this is going to be extremely useful, especially for people who are stepping into fintech in Pakistan. We're about to kick off with our first speaker, who will be talking to us, basically setting the tone for the day and talking about the investment landscape in Pakistan. I'm very pleased to welcome her. She is the founder of Invest to Innovate, which is in Pakistan. She's co-founder and general partner of the I2I Ventures, which is an early stage VC fund for Pakistan. And she's done a great deal of work and comes with a great deal of knowledge and experience. I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker. And before I do present her, I'd just like to remind you that the section is brought to you by Euronet and CreditFix. Everyone, please tune in for Miss Kalsoom.
sectors that have really come up. We've seen a lot of movement. What we saw with investors at the beginning of COVID-19 was we saw a bit of a holding pattern exist with funds that were really first looking at how they could preserve their portfolio companies. And then the second thing that we saw was that funds started to look at opportunistically at sectors that were considered quote unquote COVID proof, or sectors that were really being able to flourish because of the pandemic. So we saw a lot of deals that were happening in the e-grocery space, a lot that were happening in the B2B for offline retail, which is things that we've seen in other markets, players that were digitizing. So we really saw a leapfrogging happen actually as a result of COVID-19, because people were forced to be home and forced to be online, that the digitization that has been relatively slow in Pakistan compared to other markets, we saw that happen in a much quicker pace, which is really exciting when we talk about the fintech space. Next slide. In the fintech landscape, when we talk about the money that has been raised by companies, it's only been about 10% of the total amount since 2015, which is a little over $10 million out of the close to 200 million that I noted that has happened since 2015. However, in 2019 and 2020, that amount has been about 6.5 million, which means that over half of the money that fintech companies have raised has happened in the last 2 years. And that's actually because of the likes of companies that you've been hearing about over the last day and today as well. Companies like CreditFix, like Finja, like Days Financial, like Oran, SafePay that just raised. And obviously not all of them have disclosed deals. So we actually know, disclosed the amount of their deals. So we actually know that the amount is going to be much higher. And actually one thing when we talk about COVID-19, if we talk about the leapfrogging, something that was really exciting and really interesting is we saw a leapfrogging happening for fintech as well. People that were much more likely, especially in a market where cash is king, seeing people that were much more comfortable being able to pay by credit card or paying online, even if it was cash on delivery, thinking about savings, lending, all of those things in a much more forward thinking or progressive way where the market maybe was not thinking about that before. Next slide. So generally, as I mentioned before, the Pakistan landscape typically has a lot of regulatory barriers that oftentimes inhibit the future growth of the space. That's starting to change right now. So typically when we talk about fintech, and I've often gotten this question from people looking at the market, a lot of people always ask me like, what's happening in fintech? And if they asked me that, early last year or the year before that, I would have said that, I haven't really seen anyone that has really been able to disrupt the space because of the regulatory barriers, particularly that reside with the state bank related to licensing. What we're seeing now is that because of different, regulatory changes and things, and a state bank and an SDCP that are much more open to progress, as well as changing some of the legislations that have been in place. There's been a lot of advocacy by groups, I'm sure by the Pakistan FinTech Association, as well as by the Venture Capital Association as well, to actually move things along. And as a result, what we're seeing is a lot of opening up. And I think what we're going to see for 2021 is going to be not only, have we seen in 2020, a lot of new fintech companies coming into the space that are really exciting and oftentimes mirroring or are reflective of what we've seen throughout Southeast Asia. But also what I think we're going to see is a lot more fintech companies that will have the ability to be able to truly disrupt the status quo, as well as reflecting where customers and users are also thinking, right? Because they've been leapfrogging and been more open to digitizing as well. So things that I think that are going to be really exciting, and you're going to hear a lot more about in this future panel that's going to be taking place next with other investors. We'll get a little bit more deeper into that. But I wanted to give you this snapshot because oftentimes my feeling is that I think people sleep on Pakistan. I think we're a market that is so ripe for innovation and is ripe for innovation for what we've seen happen so far. It's a market where I think there is so much room for growth and so much room and potential for disruption. And I think from an investor perspective, there's no better time to be investing in Pakistan. And from a fintech side, there's no better time to be investing in fintech. Next slide. So thank you so much. And I hope to be able to connect with some of you offline. And again, if you want to see our deal flow tracker, we also just released with another fund a guide on how to invest in Pakistan, which is a 101 legal guide to really address some of the issues related to information asymmetry in the market. All of those resources are at your fingertips. So feel free to get those, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalsoom. That was very, very insightful. And I think just to capture gist of it, I think the future, despite COVID, looks really bright for Pakistan. There are a lot of people, like you said, who have their sights set on Pakistan and investing here. Investment really hasn't slowed down, which means there are some people who really know that there is a great deal of potential that needs to be explored. However, you did talk about one of the things that does hold Pakistan back at this particular stage, and this was even discussed yesterday, are regulations. And I believe that is something that is something that the government is addressing. We even had some speakers discuss that yesterday. And as a matter of fact, our next speaker is a gentleman who will be addressing that issue. As you know, we do have the private sector looking at investing into the fintech space, as you've seen, recent boom. But it's really important for the government to even share their plans as to what they're doing to counter the existing regulations that they have in place. So my next guest will be discussing, or rather talking about in detail, the role of the government in enabling investment and infrastructure. What a great stage 2 of that discussion. And it is by a gentleman who is the chairman of Ignite, Mr. Shabahat Ali Shah. He will be talking about what the government is doing to improve their regulations. He has over 20 years of experience in building and managing teams in the tech space. Extremely progressive experience in generating businesses in over $300 million. So clearly he really has seen things evolve, and we be bringing and sharing a lot of experience. He even holds a leadership chair at MIT Cambridge Leadership Council. So I'm really looking forward to our next speaker. I hope you are too. I believe we're going to go straight and connect with Mr. Shabahat Ali Shah.